And with that fading out, so that gradual fade out of the music, we are back. Welcome back. It is our new series of live streams for you, and we are focusing this month on computing and coding. And we're going to talk in a lot of detail over the next 8 sessions on Apple's Everyone Can Code curriculum content. So let's get the introductions done first. For those of you that were with us in the summer for our Everyone Can Create series, you'll remember hopefully who we are. I'm Richard Child. I'm the Education Manager at MCC Digital. We're an Apple Authorized Education Specialist. And with me, as always, is Mr. David Kirtland, an Apple Professional Learning Specialist and all-round guru for everything, really, aren't you, David? So welcome back. Thank you for joining us once again. And we're going to talk, as we said, about Everyone Can Code. This is a program that Apple have had for us all. It's a free resource to support you in the teaching of computing and coding. It's been around for 3 or 4 years, and it keeps getting better and better. And we're going to show you why that is over the course of the next 8 sessions through this month of September. So I'm not going to read that slide. Instead, I'm going to hand over to David, who's going to screen share. He's going to show us some resources. That's what we're focusing on today, teaching resources. And then in subsequent sessions, we're going to dive a little deeper. So David, what have you got for us, pardon me, this week?
Great. Okay, so over the next few weeks, we're going to dig into Swift Playgrounds and have a good play with it, have a good investigation into some of the approaches to coding in the classroom and how we can really get some of the children quite interested and excited about having a go at code. But to get us there, we've got a lot of resources that Apple give us, and it's all free, and there's some really good stuff in there. So we're just going to have a quick look today and see what there is and how you can start using it. So before I go and have a look at the resources, I'm just going to take you to a website. And this is on Apple's website, and it's a PDF document that you can download and have a look. And I think Richard will give you the link to this at the end. But this is just an overview document now about the latest version of Everyone Can Code. We are in version 2. It has changed quite a lot. The old one is still there, if you do want to have a look through that. And there are some nice elements in that, particularly for the younger children. But we're going to have a look at the current one, which splits the resources into 2 areas. And let me just scroll down through here. And we can see the overview of the curriculum here. And it gives us these 2 books. It gives us a puzzles book and an adventures book. The puzzles one is the first one, followed on by a slightly more advanced one, the adventures book there. And we get an orange version and a white version. So there's a student guide, and then the white one is the teacher's guide. And that gives us all the kind of things that we need as teachers to know that we're covering the bits of the curriculum we need to, and it gives us all that kind of hints and tips that we might need along the way. It's worth noting that this relates to Swift Playgrounds, the app that you can download from the App Store. It is free, and there's lots of resources that you can then download inside Swift Playgrounds. Again, it's all free. It says here on the guide it's there for iPad. There is a Mac version of Swift Playgrounds as well now. So everything we do here is completely doable on the iPad. If we just look a little bit further down this table here, we've got some more advanced books here, which take us on to Key Stage 3 and 4. Which all are really about app development, and that's taking things a bit further. So this is moving away from that learning process of let's get our heads around the programming language. Let's actually start creating some apps now, create a resource, and even publishing it to the App Store. And that's when we move on to Macs and using Xcode to get into the really kind of heavy-duty code inside of things. But again, there's a whole set of teacher resources and teacher guides there available for us to download. It gives us a nice little summary in that middle column there. It gives us an audience column. So it is kind of aimed at Key Stage 2 around Swift Playgrounds. If you are working with older children, so Key Stage 3 upwards, you probably need to work through this first just to give us that grounding, because it does start at that point where we know nothing about code and takes us all the way through. So even if you are working with Key Stage 3 or 4, probably worth spending a couple of weeks just working through this quite quickly, so you've got that basic grounding before you move on to the more advanced levels there. But certainly, this puzzles book that we're going to have a look at now is aimed really at Key Stage 2. So let's just scroll down a little bit further. We've got lots of stuff on here. I'm not going to go into the detail. You can download this and have a look. But we get some nice useful things here. So we've got a quick overview of the Swift Playgrounds app. And we'll have a look at this in a few moments. But it's just pointing out these are the main features of the app. This is how it works. This is what the lesson plans will refer to as we're going through there. So there's a nice little overview if you want to have a look at Swift Playgrounds, just so we know what the buttons do and where they are. But as we go down another page, it shows us how the puzzles book, in this case, breaks down into the different chapters. And it's worth noting just we have these headings of commands, functions, for loops, variables, and so on as we're going through here. Plus a token time duration, how long it might take us in a class when we've got a classroom of children working through this as well. So the commands chapter, we're probably looking at about 3 hours. There's quite a lot of material here. For this puzzles book, we're probably looking at about 45 hours worth of classroom activity altogether. So there's some good resources there that you can spend quite a lot of time, whether you spread it across half a term or a bit longer, depends up to you really, how you want to go about having a look at it. And likewise, with the more advanced adventures one there. It actually says coming soon on here, but it is here now. This was the preview document, I think, from the end of last year, but it's just come out this summer. So all the documents are there on the bookstore for you to go and have a look at. So that's a good PDF to kind of start having a look at and get that good overview. So I'm going to jump out of there for now, and let's jump straight into the Books app and have a look. So I've got all the Everyone Can Code books downloaded here, the new ones and the previous version. So if you are working with the younger children, it might be worth just having a quick look at those Get Started with Code 1 and 2, because there's some nice things in there. These are activities to do before you step into Swift playgrounds, just to get the children thinking about that computational thought process and the type of language and the kind of sequential things that we do when we're coding. But we're going to jump in and have a look at the puzzle. So I've got the orange one, which is the student guide, and I've got the white one, which is the teacher guide. We'll have a look at the teacher one because that actually includes the student guide in it. So we've got it all in one place, which is nice and easy. So let's have a look here. And I'm going to just tap on the table of contents so we can see the whole book. And like any other book, we've got the whole structure here, and it's going to take us right from the beginning as though we've never done any coding in our life and take us right through that process. So we are looking at Swift. Swift is a programming language that Apple developed themselves, I don't know, over 10 years ago now probably, and it's used internally for them to create iOS, iPad OS, and a lot of the apps that we're using on here. And to try and get developers creating more and more apps for the iPad, they've released this program of study to help other people learn it and have a look at doing it. So the nice thing about using this in a classroom is that it is a real-life programming language. We're starting children right at the beginning with all these concepts, and we're taking them all the way through with a real, actual life programming language that they could ultimately end up creating their own apps and putting them on the App Store for other people to download and use. So just tapping through the book, once we get past introduction, these are the commands section. We've got the functions, just as we saw in that breakdown overview a few moments ago. And we've got the student pages and we've got the teacher pages. And we'll have a look at those as we skip through this. But before we go to that, I'm going to go right to the end of the book, because this is a really useful section when we're doing our planning. And we can map this across to what we're actually doing in the lessons and the kind of things that we need to do here. So we have an overview of, this page is looking at the English National Curriculum, Key Stage 2, I've got Key Stage 3, I've also got the Scottish Curriculum for Excellence, and we've got the CCEA version as well. So let me just dig into these so we see what we've got. I'm going to have a look at the Key Stage 2 one, but they all work in the same kind of way. So if I tap on here, I get a bit more detail. And you see there, it's just jumped onto the aims tab along the top. And this gives us the aims, which are straight out of the national curriculum. So these are the headline data for the computer science bit of the national curriculum. And it tells us what we should be doing to teach the children this curriculum. And as we tap down here, look, we've got some little diagrams, little pie charts that tell us, well, we've got 100% coverage, 50% coverage, or whatever the pie chart is representing there. This is just a bit of a guide to say, if we just follow it step by step through the book, we kind of are covering a fair chunk of the curriculum. There might be bits we miss, and it will tell us what we miss, but it's telling us that we are covering most of what we need to do. And if I tap on here, on one of these dots, we get even more detail saying this is what we're actually covering in it here. And we are saying there are some bits that we might have to go onto the Adventures book to do the rest, and that will tip off that last little quarter there to make sure we have covered it. But there are bits that aren't covered by the curriculum, but we can work around those with the extra resources that we do in the classroom anyway. If I tap on the subject content tab up at the top, we get a lot more detail here. So down the left-hand side, those are those chapter headings. So we've got the commands, functions, for loops, etc. that we've just seen as we skipped through the book. If you want to know a bit more about what they actually are, there's a little I next to it, and that tells you, well, in the commands chapter, this is what we're actually looking at here. And it references some of the examples that we're doing, and it will tell us where we find these in the book and so on. Now, along the top are the options that we have to tick off from the national curriculum. And we can see here we're doing quite well straight off with just that first book of the things that we need to be covering. We don't cover quite so much of the technology safety. There's a lot of those where we don't do it, but there's a little bit of it in the logical operators. And if you want to know what it is, when you tap on it, this is always the activity where we're building a quiz or a survey app. And it tells you exactly where you find this in the book, and it's in the Connect chapter. So that's to do with the logical operators, but it's the Connect chapter. So we can see exactly where we're doing. So if we're kind of sitting down with our plans and we're doing our scheme for the year, we're doing our curriculum mapping, we know exactly where each resource is as we're going through. And this is really useful. If I tap on, I don't know, logical reasoning, I tap on the orange button there, it gives you that overview of exactly what we should be doing. And then the individual chapters below it, if I look at the for loops or the variables, there's lots of information there for us. Things like the search technologies, it does touch on it, but it doesn't really come into the book, but we might want to expand some of these lessons with our own activities. And as we do that, we can start building in some of the extra content so that we are making sure the children have got a really nice experience of the wider computing curriculum. So from a planning point of view, there's a lot of it already done for us. It's there. We just have to work out exactly what we need to add to it and work with in the classroom. But they're really handy just to have at the end of the book. So let me go back to my table of contents, and let's go back to the beginning of the book, and let's have a look at the first chapter. So I've just skipped on to the first one there, commands. And we can see we've got the first few pages which are in the student guide. So let's have a quick flick through the student guide. So these are nice graphical design of the books. There's some really nice presentation of information, and it makes some of the descriptions really easy for the children to follow. What's changed really with this second version of Everyone Can Code is that this has been aligned with the Everyone Can Create curriculum, the kind of things that we were looking at in the first series of these webinars. And you'll find there are actually some tasks which do link together. So you're developing maybe your drawing skills and your diagram skills, and along with some of the planning, maybe evidencing it with a bit of a video. And there's all sorts of things in there that actually link the two together really quite nicely. So you've got a much kind of wider approach to this rather than just thinking we are teaching coding and computing here. So this is introducing us to our character. So this is Byte. So these lessons, once we get into the Swift Playgrounds app, we can download the playground that we're going to work with. And the first key one that we're going to start with is getting started with code. That one there, the Learned Code 1. And in these ones, we're really focused on using this character, Byte, and we want to navigate him around a map. We're going to collect gems, we're going to jump through portals, and we're going to do all sorts of things to get him to complete the tasks that we're given. And some of those do get quite difficult. Some of the logical thinking about it really does make the children think and solve those problems. As we move further through the book, we start stepping outside of that game-based approach, and we start using things where we're changing files, and we're editing sounds, and we're making patterns, and we're working with variables to change things. We'll see those in a moment. But at the starting point, we are moving this character around a map. So we're right at the beginning here, and we're bringing in our key vocabulary. It tells us what we're doing there. We've got call, we've got camel case. So we know we're starting to put in our syntax there. So you can see we've got those capital letters in fairly unusual points in the words, but it's making sure we understand that syntax so we get things right from the beginning. So in the student guide, we're all broken down into, we start with these learn sections of the book. So it's learning the bits about it. This is where we have kind of class discussions, or we might have tasks and exercises, which don't even involve the iPad sometimes. It's more of a thinking and a discussion or a planning exercise. And there's lots of these in here. This first one starts with hide and seek. So it's about hiding a physical object around the classroom and coming up with routes to finding the object and getting the children to think about it and reflect on the outcomes. Once we've done the learning section, all the chapters move on to a try, where that takes us into the Swift Playgrounds app. And you can see that screenshot on the right-hand side there. That's straight from the app there, where we say, now let's apply those skills straight to the code inside. And we've got a few options here. We've got some of our markup tools that we might have come across in Everyone Can Create, so we can annotate some of the screenshots we might take. Let's skip on. Once we've finished the try section, let's go on a bit further. There's lots of this here. We're getting applying. So we've taken all those knowledge we've tried, those skills we've had a go at doing, and we start applying it to different tasks. So this is kind of like an extension task really in a classroom. This one's relating to a piece of hardware, which you may or may not have, but you could adapt this to something that you have in school. But there's always an apply. So let's do it. put those skills into a context outside of just the app that we've been using. And then there's always the connect section to finish with here, really, which is about getting the children applying that knowledge to real world problems and taking the thought processes a little bit further. So let's have a look at the teacher guide. And straight away, we've got our aims down at the bottom. So what are we actually going to learn in this chapter? So it's giving us all our details there. So again, when we're making our documentation for our planning for the year, we've got all the phrases and the things we need to include in there. And we've got a bit of prior knowledge. We've got a bit of graphical representation of some of the things that we need to be kind of discussing with the children and just how we might start just enhancing their understanding of it before we even really get onto the coding. In the teacher guide, you get lots of other bits of information as well. You always get a little video. It is for SEN children. It is in American Sign Language. So it's got some use over here, but it's just be aware that it is American Sign Language. And it also links us to a bit of an accreditation for the teachers through Apple Teacher. So it does link to those badges specifically around Swift Playground. So if you do want to take this a bit further and look into it in a bit more detail, it takes you straight there to all the Apple Teacher resources and so on. So as we're trying, it gives us our coding. It tells us exactly what the students are doing. It also gives us these nice bits here. It shows us the answers. It's kind of like the answers at the back of the book. So if we're a bit nervous with the coding as we're going through this, it does give us the solutions. And it gives us solution 1 here in this case, which is what we might expect the children to do. Or if we've got children who are a bit more advanced and have already tried it themselves, we've got a more complicated solution. And one of the things this is focusing on really all the way through is that there isn't always a right and a wrong answer to these problems. Some of them you could do in 2 or 3 different ways. Most of the children will end up doing solution 1 in all these cases because that's the steps that we take through in the book. But you might find the odd child who does kind of dig a bit deeper, start looking at other ways of doing it and working with the code in a bit more of an advanced way. But it gives you those options as well. So if they are doing things we're not sure of, everything's here just to help us. It also looks at common mistakes, things that the children might do and not quite get the correct answer. So when we're looking at a teacher, if they're presenting us with the iPad and saying, look, this isn't working, we have the answers here in front of us. And as we go through, we've got more of these. You'll notice here, we are moving this character around a map, and we've got all these built-in lines of code that we're using. So we're looking at solution 1, move forward and turn left and collect gem. Even if you've never seen Swift as a language before, we kind of know what it's doing because this is fairly English. That move forward tells us what this character is going to do. We've noticed the syntax there. We noticed where we put the capitals. So we need to be aware of that when we're typing it. We've got the brackets there, the parentheses, so we can put values and things later on. But we are starting to see that the structure of it is not too complicated, really. Let's skip through and we get more help here. Look, we've even got the screen there. Look, we can see the character on the map and the number of the squares. So we can see exactly that the children need to be put it in 6 steps, and we've got 2 turns and 2 actions. So we've got a total of 10 commands there, but it's given us it kind of black and white. It's all straightforward in front of us, and it just keeps going. There's lots and lots of these resources, and it's again broken down into those different options or different areas of apply and connect and so on. There's lots of really useful options there. That's taking us on to chapter 2, functions, and they all work through in the same way. The adventures book works in exactly the same format. It looks the same as this as well. So the resources there, download them. They're all free, and spend some time digging around with those, but there's a lot of really good content in there. Let's have a quick look at the Swift Playgrounds app, and you will need to download this from the App Store, but again, it's free. So Swift Playgrounds looks like this, and when you download it for the first time, this screen will be fairly empty. So I've got some playgrounds downloaded inside the app here, and we'll have a look at a couple of these, but you can add lots of these into your app. So just to get started, down in the bottom corner, it does say see all. So I'm just going to tap that. And this shows me all the playgrounds which are available to download. And all these, again, they're free. We just tap that get button and it downloads it onto this iPad. And we're in the Learn to Code section at the top here. So these are the playgrounds that Apple give us that relate directly to those lesson materials that we've just been looking at. So the majority of them to start with will be out of Learn to Code 1. And those are all those sequences, and we'll dig into those in a moment. But we also get these challenges along the bottom. So this is where we're stepping out of that map-based, move a character around a grid kind of approach. And we've got things like the Sonic Workshop, where we're starting to play with variables. so we can change the type of sounds that we're playing. Same with the, there's a nice one here on spirals, which it starts off with beginners. This has got a lot of maths links in it here. So we're creating patterns, a bit like a spirograph. Or you remember those old screensavers where we used to get shapes that bounce around a monitor? It's those types of things where changing the variables, change the numbers of corners, or the color, or the thickness, or the speed, and it's getting the children to come up with different patterns and solving problems around there. So a lot of the lessons include these challenges and just get the children thinking in a slightly different way. So you've got quite a lot of depth to these resources here. Now, if I scroll a little bit further down, we start getting into third-party playgrounds. So these are other companies who make playgrounds that sit inside the app here, but it controls hardware. So there's the MeBot one. So some of the lessons relate to hardware. MeBot is it's a bit like a robot you build out of different pieces and you put it together and it dances. It does lots of break dancing and you can move the different motors around to make its legs and its arm move, and it's great fun, but you can synchronize it to music and all sorts of things with it. But there's the environment, the playground, to control that MeBot. We've got a couple of drones there. So we've got drones by Tello and by Parrot. And these are brilliant. When you're working with the children and they're doing their first bit of programming on the iPad, that's great. But when they start coding on the iPad and all of a sudden a drone takes off and flies around the room, they absolutely love this. And it's so much fun to explore some of these resources. We've got some from Lego there. We've got the Skoog ones. And if we scroll along the bottom, we've got all sorts of stuff. We will look in one of these weeks at Spheros, and Spheros have their own app, which is great, but you can also take it a step further and start exploring Swift programming with a Sphero. And we've got all sorts on here. You might have some microbits in schools. You might have some dash and dots. Any of these all talk quite happily to Swift. And this list is always growing. There's always extra ones being added on here. So let's go back to my playgrounds, and I'm just going to have a quick jump into Learn to Code one. I'll mention the Astrobot one there just because it's on my iPad there. Astrobot is another one that relates to a little robot that you build and you drive it around and you pick things up. It's essentially like a moon rover, and you're supposed to be on a planet picking up these rocks and doing challenges. If you don't have the robot, that playground actually lets you control the robot in a virtual reality environment. So you can still complete all the tasks and you can go on and do all sorts of things with it just on the screen without actually having the physical robot. And again, it's all free. So that might be quite nice to kind of just do something extra with it. Maybe if you're doing things like code clubs after school, there's some good things you can just take things a bit further with it on there. So let's have a look at Learn to Code 1 so we can see the Swift Playgrounds app. And all the playgrounds have this kind of format. We have something on the right-hand side. And in this case, I've got my map that I can spin around and have a look at. So there's Byte, and we can see the grid on the squares, and we need to move him along those grid squares to collect that gem. We don't have to worry about the steps, but we do have to worry about kind of edges where he can't step up there as well. So all the playgrounds have something like that on the right-hand side. If you're using something like the Lego one, which has sensors in it, so it will sense things like temperature and distance, it will give you real-time graphs of those sensor recordings there rather than this nice little kind of animated environment. But it's something that relates to what we're doing here. In the top left-hand corner, we have our instructions. So this is where it's teaching us what we need to do and sets out a little bit of our challenge. And then down in the bottom, it says tap to enter the code. And if I tap on there, I get this gray bar along the bottom. And this is kind of my minimized keyboard. So if I just tap the arrow in the bottom corner, that up arrow, it brings up the rest of the keyboard. So as we get further into our coding, we can just start typing our code. But as we're learning, you'll notice along the top, we've got these dark gray boxes where it says collect gem and move forward. Excuse me. And these are our predictive code. This is exactly the same as if you're sending a text message and it pops up with those suggested words that you might want to include. So we've got these suggestions here. So we can just tap those rather than typing our code in. And in fact, if I hide my keyboard, those suggestions are still there. So while we're learning it, it's telling us in the instructions, we need to move our character forward. So it's giving us the command move forward, and we need to collect the gem, exactly as it says in instruction 2 there. Those are the commands it gives us in this predictive bit here. So as we're going through this, we can start off by just using these predictive elements. And then as we get further on, we start editing those and start typing in as we get more familiar with that syntax. Now, just having a quick look around the screen, up in the top corner, we've got the sound button there, which is muted on mine. All the way through these lessons that play some nice soothing background music, which is lovely when there's one of you doing it. But if you've got a class of 25 doing it, maybe mute those. So it just turns the sound off for us. We do have a little clock at the bottom, which lets me step through the code a little bit faster, because Byte does tend to go quite steadily as he's walking around the map. So you can just speed him up a bit as you get in a bit further through it. It is nice to be able to step through the code as well. So it will do it one step at a time and highlight your code, particularly when we come to debugging and we wanted to see what works and what maybe doesn't work. And we do get hints as well. So if we do get really stuck, the children can have a hint there as well before we run our code. Just looking over on the left-hand side, if I tap that headline where it says issuing commands, it drops down to these titles. And this is what we saw in the screenshot in the book. So the certain lessons that you're doing in the book will refer to individual ones of these. So we're on the very first one there, issuing command, adding commands, and then we're going to get on to toggling a switch and so on. So the lesson activities in the puzzles book will relate to these activities here in that try section. So once we've done the learning, we've got our knowledge, we're onto the try bit. This is where we step into the app and we have a go and we work through these. And as you do these, they will tick them off in green. If I tap on the three dots, I get a nice option here to reset the page. So if the children have gone a little bit off the task there and they want to have another go, you can reset it. Or if you're using shared iPads, you can reset the pages here to let another group have a go as well. There's a couple of nice options. It gives us the option inside the app to take a picture. It's really just a screenshot, but it's there straight in the app. Or record a movie. And again, it's just a screen recording, but we have got a video of this character walking through the map, especially if we've done a step by step through the code so we can see exactly what's happening. And we get a video there in our photo library. And of course, when they're there, it's really easy for us to ask the children to upload it to Shobi or Google Classroom or Seesaw or whichever one of those assessment platforms we're using, and ask the children to reflect on it and say, well, actually, why did this code work? Or if it didn't work, what did you need to do to fix it? So we've got that learning process going through where they're explaining it and they're telling us a lot more detail about what they're doing. And that really is kind of the Swift Playgrounds app. And there's all sorts of things in here as we kind of work through these different lessons. And you'll see there's a lot of them just in this Learn to Code one. I've got a green tick next to GenFarm because at some point I've completed that one. But there's lots and lots on there for us to work through. And that's just Learn to Code 1. And that's before we get onto those challenges like the spirals and the battleships and so on. So really, that was just a quick overview of these are the resources. This is what they look like. This is how you might start using them and how you've got those curriculum correlations so you can map it across to your planning. And a first look at the app so we know where we are and how we get to these various assets. In the next session, we're going to go and actually have a go at completing some of these tasks and dig into some of these exercises. So, Richard, back to you.
Excellent. As always, thank you so much. And hopefully that gives you the impression, the excitement that I share. These are really well-produced resources. If you're a school with iPads in your setting, then you've done the hard bit. You've spent the money. You've got those iPads in your setting. Go get these resources. They are absolutely incredible. And as we saw there, mapped out to the various different areas of the curriculum. In Wales, by the way, sadly doesn't map to the digital competence framework fully, but this is absolutely in that fourth strand, the computational thinking strand, and we have many schools in Wales that are using Swift Playgrounds and these resources to support their implementation of the DCF. So yeah, it's just incredible. I think Apple, the App Store economy is huge, and what I love about this program is that there is an endpoint, isn't there, on that slide you showed us that takes us through the different age groups. The end point is you are making apps and publishing them to the App Store and selling them, who knows what. So it's really exciting, and any of us can take these materials. If creating apps is something you want to do, then you've got everything you need with an iPad, a Mac, and this program. Everyone can code. So splendid. And we're going to look at it in more detail starting next Tuesday. So do join us for that. And as always, of course, we will be publishing these onto our YouTube channel as well, so you can share them with colleagues. So we did see some resources at the very beginning, the PDF with the curriculum maps and everything else. That's on this page. So if you point your phone or your iPad camera at that QR code, it will take you to the Everyone Can Code overview on Apple's web page. And halfway down that page, there is a link to the PDF that David showed us. A whole ton of information there. It's a big PDF, so sadly I'm not going to email it to you all because it's about 80 megabytes in size. So please do click that link and take a look. Also, we've talked briefly about Apple Teacher, which is the CPD program for teachers. Just access it online with your Apple ID, so that's your iTunes account, your Apple Music account. Just log in, identify yourself as a teacher, and you can work through those modules. Eventually, you'll earn an accreditation, Apple Teacher. That's a little badge that you can put on your social media or your email signature, or even print out and hang on your classroom wall. Why not? So overview is the first QR code there, and the all-important sign-up page is the second one. So do take a look at that, and lots there to look at and work through. Finally, just as we did for our previous creative series, we have a toolkit for you. As a school, we can help you with this MyLearn computing toolkit. It consists of 16 iPads, so one between two for the class and one for teacher. A set of 15 spheros. We're going to look at spheros later on in this series. They are amazing. Really take the computing off the screen and onto the classroom table, onto the floor, and even into the playground. There's also 5 Sphero Rover robots. That's the little fella in the picture in the top right-hand corner. And of course, all this curriculum content that's in Everyone Can Code. Sphero also have some great curriculum content. With this toolkit, you're not going to run out of things to do with your class when it comes to computing. So do get in touch if you would like some more details about that. It is just £289 a month on a MyLearn subscription. We look forward to seeing you next time around when we're going to actually, you were teasing us, weren't you, with that activity? We're going to actually go take a look and see what the answers were. So we look forward to that next week. We do hope you can join us again. Thanks for being with us today, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.